As you can see in the video, there's not a central presentation panel in the way a PowerPoint presentation might work, so much as several windows that work in tandem. The desktop isn't hidden, but used and revealed. It's the play space of the production. What could be called the main record of the talking head, which is John or Christie, spins at upper left. Illustration tracks at the same time are pulled up via the dock. Now a dock is an Apple desktop interface application. It's what you see at the bottom of the screen and what is sitting at the bottom of my screen. John and Christie even inhabit the two-dimensional space of the desktop as actors, gesturing to the things that appear beside them or beneath them. This example of desktop MCing is created on a Mac, but DJs can work on machines running Windows as well. You see video, screenshots, JPEGs and other image files, a scrolling web page, and what are called sticky notes brought up. It's different from watching a DJ perform live, of course, in that the final video desktop MC project is created and edited beforehand, and then shown in the form of a final video. But we do see the moves between records, the gesturing mouse, and the way that improvisation can inform some of what happens. Sticky notes, for instance, are brought in so that sort of behind the scenes or in the background, you can learn that, quote, YouTube user Lyle H. Saxon created some of the content displayed in a video about trains. And all of this, of course, is captured via the screen recorder, and that's something that you don't see in the projects. And the footage, of course, is also edited in a final film, something else that's hidden. I mentioned that there are other examples of this kind of multi-application coordination that foreground instead of hide the desktop and desktop MCing. And let me mention just two examples now. The left of these two simultaneously running videos is Michael Wesch's 2007 video project Web 2.0, The Machine Is Us, The Machine Is Using Us, an edited sequence of screen captures in which Wesch makes his arguments within and through a range of applications in Windows, many of which accommodate writing in some way. The other, which is on the right, is somewhat older and has appeared in various manifestations, usually under the title Desktop Wars, with animated stick figures running amok and ultimately fighting with the user of the desktop application. The space of the desktop is the stage of the animated drama. Now, I don't mean to suggest that these two videos that you're seeing now are desktop MCing projects in the way that the Scientific American pieces are, but obviously they share many of the same elements, making the desktop the real scene of the interaction. Created by personal computer DJs who don't hide their tracks so much as show how much digital composition involves working between multiple applications, desktop MC projects map the activity of DJing on a PC. They also produce texts that speak to what I think of as the informatics of electronic composition. And here's what I mean by this. Use an example from web writing. Coding a simple website in HTML often means writing linear code that is displayed by a browser in what amounts to as a pretty simple relationship. To create a link on a web page, I can write it using my HTML editor, and it looks something like this. As a result, a link appears that reads, "Check this out." The user can click on the link, and it goes to the linked page. Pretty simple. But if I want to make that link an interactive image that changes when the user mouses over the image, I need a slightly more involved piece of code called a rollover or a mouseover. Now, mouseovers are ubiquitous online and axiomatic to web writing because the mouseover creates this atmosphere on a website where the user feels that his or her presence is recognized by the movement of the mouse. Mouseovers can be coded in several different ways, but here's one way to do it fairly simply in HTML. Without spending too much time explaining the syntax of this HTML for those of you who might not be familiar with it, this piece of code has two main parts. There's a link tag, which begins a href, and there's an image tag that begins img src. The image is not just an image though, it's also a named document object within the code, so these two pieces of code, the link and the image tag, have a relationship between them, which is based on the naming of the image as a document. When the user's mouse encounters or mouses over the image, which is called document.dj.src, that image is commanded by the link tag to change. When the mouse arrow leaves the image or mouses out, the image is commanded to change, in this case, back to what it was originally. It could be commanded to change to something else. Unlike the more linear link tag, this mouse over code is sort of circular. An image is coded as a document that then follows a command to change if either or both of two things happen, mousing in and mousing out. In addition, the image is a link, so if the user clicks it, a new URL will load in the browser. Making the image change when the user mouses over requires a sense of the informatics of writing for the web. The mouse over is keyed in like written language, but what is ultimately created is not just language, but really an information structure. Making the image change when the user mouses over also turns navigation, or what we might call reading, into a kind of game. Reading is playing. The mouse over is something for the user to play with, to experiment with, and also to use practically. Now, my example of the mouse over is a very simple one. The use of cascading style sheets, JavaScript, and databases required different versions of this gaming informatics. In the gaming informatics of electronic media composition, information structures are designed to foster this recognition of a user playing with interactive kinetic elements amid dynamic aspects of display. I've moved to this example of the mouse over in the gaming informatics of electronic composition to try to illustrate my point that desktop MCing speaks to this kind of writing very well. The desktop MC puts a number of elements in motion and interaction, pulling files up and minimizing them at just the right time. The desktop MC makes the space of the desktop a layered presentation space with orchestrated information structures. The desktop is not a space where the workings of the environment, like the dock or the mouse pointer, go away. In fact, watching a desktop MC presentation is a lot like watching someone work. It's also a lot like seeing the informatics behind a PowerPoint presentation. Desktop MC presentations like the ones being released by Scientific American are actively leveraging the emergent forms of electronic authorship that go into the creation of new media.